We'll talk about all that, some more. Let's go to John McMullen, who's set to join me right now here on Football 24/7 as we prep for day number 13 of training camp. Joined now by John McMullen. J-Mac, how you doing on this Tuesday morning, brother?
Doing well. Lucky day 13 for the Eagles, if you consider what could have happened with Landon Dickerson. So, best case scenario, chance he'll be back for week 1. Even if he's not, it should be early in the season. And obviously, when you weigh what could have been if it were a fully torn meniscus, could have been a potentially season-ending injury. So, the most positive news it possibly could have been, I would say, for Landon.
Yeah, no doubt about it, John. I didn't talk to you about it last night after the news broke, but we had Dr. Chow on, John, on the afternoon show, who was excellent, kind of shed some light on what that might mean, minor surgery like that, why it's still not a guarantee he's back for week 1, but why also overall it is a very positive thing as compared to what the alternatives were. So good news, John, on Landon Dickerson, and as you point out, rightfully so, if not week 1, it'll be at some point, I would think, early in the season. So great. It's basically as good a news as you could get when you see a player like that go down.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's, likely, and I'm sure Dr. Chow said, likely a trim.
Yep.
I love the term minor surgery because one player told me years ago, the only thing minor is when it's not happening to you.
Yeah, right.
Everything is somewhat major, but compared to what it could have been, and I don't, Dr. Chow could probably, break it down better than me. Not probably, definitely, but I do, it's one of those things where lately, if you look around the rest of the league, a lot of meniscus injuries, they generally recommend the full repair for long term. The trim is a short term fix.
Right.
And if it were a skill position player, probably a different route they go. So that factors into it as well. And then Landon's history, I mean, the dude plays through everything. So, but it is a short-term fix, and, hopefully he can get through the season.
Yeah, John, any concern long-term about that? I mean, maybe after the year he has the full surgery. I don't know, but any concern about that? You obviously just mentioned Landon's history. He plays through a lot, but he's also been through a lot. He's had two ACLs done. I mean, a litany of injuries in his career in the lower body. It's really the only reason the guy wasn't a first-round draft pick was because of the 2 ACLs he tore in his college, one at Bama, one at Florida State University. So any concern about that, John, long-term? I know you're probably speculating here, but would the expectation be he might do a bigger surgery when the season ends? Like, how do you view it from that perspective?
Yeah, I don't know if that's the case. By long term, I mean, later in life, it's probably going to affect him pretty considerably. If he doesn't get it fully repaired, but a lot of things factor into his history. He had knee surgery in the off season. We don't know exactly what for, but that when he was dealing with, and he had to miss the second half of the NFC Championship game. And played through it in the Super Bowl, but clearly he wasn't healthy. He had off-season surgery on his knee. So, yeah, he has a long history of knee problems. He's 6'6". That factors into it. He's 340 pounds. That factors into it. The wear and tear that creates on your lower body. But, yeah, I mean, that's, as you mentioned, that's the reason he wasn't a first-round pick. He was clearly a first-round talent. And he tore his ACL late in his last season at Alabama. People may remember.
Yep.
He hurt it in the SEC championship game, and he took the final snap in the national championship game as sort of a tip of the cap to what was an All-American season, and they let him go out there. That's how quick. And I remember he was doing backflips. ACLs are. I say all the time. You feel pretty good because I've had an ACL surgery as well. You feel pretty good, like 3 months out, but it's not healed. And that's the problem. It's got to heal. But Long term, yeah, he's had a lot of knee problems. You know, one of the things that bothers me about the safety dogma around the NFL, nobody thinks about quality of life. All they think about is head injuries, which I get, but come on, if you're going to be worried about people's safety, you got to be worried about everything, not just head injuries.
Right.
And this is a brutal and violent sport, and a lot of injuries. But you know, that's a testament to guys like Landon Dickerson, who, you know, and again, I don't know if it's a full tear. Probably not. They probably wouldn't have recommended that if it was. So, but you know, you have to have a certain type of guy who wants to play through it, and Landon's obviously going to lead that list more times than not.
Yeah, definitely think about the quality of life later for him, John. I hear stories like that all the time. I mean, even just the afternoon show with Dan Cilia, you know, he talks about it, and he didn't play as long as others. He brings on guests all the time who talk about, you know, that's what you just said. The quality of life later is absolutely brutal. You know, you can't sleep. You get up in the middle of the night. You're on pain meds your whole life. All those different things. So I hope it all works out. That's obviously kind of comes with the territory of football. John, day number 13 here. Let's move into practice today. Michael Clay set to speak, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the last practice before the Browns come to town for 2 joint practices on Wednesday and Thursday. So day 13 coming up, John. Michael Clay this morning.
Yeah, the Browns will be here tomorrow, so I expect this to be a lighter practice, obviously, with them coming in, and those are going to be 2 high-intensity practices. So a little bit to prepare, get ready for another team. Not game planning. I don't want to, you know, get people down that route, but, you know, just prepare a little bit and get your bodies ready for what should be a pretty competitive atmosphere. When you see a different color, these are the dog days of August in training camp, and you get tired and monotonous. You know, A.J. Dillon was talking about that. You know, it's like Groundhog Day sometimes. Same thing every day. So to get an infusion of a new team is generally a pickup for everybody.
Right. Yeah, good stuff. John, what do you look for when you're at a joint practice? You often say, John, you often use the 2 most important days of the summer. When you say that, elaborate on that, John, for the people.
Well, they're the 2. You know, sometimes they have 2 different joint practices. They've done that in the past, and it can expand to a number of days. But because it's more important to get tested by somebody else. You know, Brandon Graham and Lane Johnson used to talk about it all the time. They both have been around so long. They've seen everything each other can do. Just, you know, there's nothing new, and they all know the tricks, and they're very smart players, and so you need that kind of different look to really gauge where you're at. And as I said, with NFL teams, whatever you think of Cleveland, whatever you think of other teams you may think are bad, everybody's got really good players. So it's a good time to test your abilities and against a different opponent. And it's just obviously even more so from the standpoint of the Eagles, who, you know, value the joint practices more for the first and second team than they are for going to be the preseason game on Saturday. So, you know, this is where the Jalen Hurtses and the Saquon Barkleys of the world are going to get all their work in this week.
Also, how about, you know, guys like Keely Ringo? I kind of wish we had a team with a little bit more of a stable quarterback position right now so that they could test Keely Ringo and those guys in practice, but they still got guys who can throw the ball. So that's interesting too, you know, from that perspective, John. You got guys battling obviously all through training camp, and you know, you get reps in preseason, but they're limited, and there's only so many of them, and you don't know what type of caliber talent you're going up against. So from that perspective too, I would assume you learn a lot about the battles, the position battles on the defense and on the team.
Yeah, it is. You know, I predicted, I think you're going to see a lot of positive about the Eagles defense coming out, because Cleveland does have so many quarterback issues, and Joe Flacco's likely going to be the starter. who knows how to play, obviously. Um, but, you know, at his age, he's somewhat limited. And, you know, who knows if Kenny Pickett's going to practice and he's back. So, you know, they put out their depth chart, and still, I think there was a lot of hype on Shedeur Sanders. You're going to hear a lot of Shedeur Sanders talk that's going to drive me insane. He's still their fourth-string quarterback from their own perception. But obviously, you know, he'll get a lot of time in the preseason game, but the practices should be mostly Joe Flacco. And if Kenny can go, and I haven't checked today, I'll check at some point, a lot of Kenny Pickett, or, you know, then Dylan Gabriel if not, or Shedeur might mix in a little bit for what's going on in Cleveland. And you're right. I mean, it'd be nice to have a little bit of a different environment from that standpoint and be tested a little bit more. You mentioned Keeley, though. I mean, he's going to play in the preseason game, so it's not just the practices with him. He's got to get reps, and that competition. And Jacorian Bennett is getting thrown into it, and Adoree Jackson. All those guys will have to play again in the preseason game.
John, is it really kind of shaping up a lot more now with the cornerback spot maybe being the one left that still could be anybody come week one? I mean, I look at safety, I'm thinking it's going to be Sidney Brown. I'm looking at the linebacker spot, I'm thinking it's going to be Bond and Trotter. I'm looking at, obviously, the replacement for Milton is going to be a Jomo and Davis, a combination of the two. I'm looking at the edge spot based on preseason game number one. That's going to be Jalix Hunt. You know, right guard, that's going to be Tyler Steen. Now, I guess left guard's a big question, but it's kind of the last position battle, John, that's still up in the air. Would you agree?
Not necessarily, as you mentioned. We have to see, you know, this will be our first chance to see how the Eagles handle the short term at left guard, which, you know, I do think they're not going to make drastic moves and, you know, flip Tyler Steen to left guard as long as it remains a short-term timetable. But Kenyon Green's also out for the preseason, so he's not going to be involved. And then you have Brett.
John, he's probably getting cut, right? I mean, he's not now. He's out for the preseason. I saw that Schefter tweet.
I think they might stash him on injured reserve at the cut down because they don't want to. But you know, I don't think he's going to be part of the plan. But they might stash him on it. Just remember, you can stash two guys on the injured reserve now. New rule that they started last year, and they're not out for the season at the cut down. So I think they might hide them that way, and just in case they need them down the road. But, you know, it's hard to imagine Brett Toth getting it. So maybe Trevor Keegan is back involved. He's been cross-training a lot at center. Maybe, hey, Jeff Stoutland might pull the trigger on one of those big-bodied young guys. We always talk about how he likes big bodies inside. And maybe this is an opportunity for Miles Hinton or Cam Williams or Holland Pierce if he thinks one of them can project a guard. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle that. That's probably the most interesting part of this practice, to see what the short term. My assumption is Toth will get the majority of first team reps, but we'll see how it shakes out.
Yeah, no, I agree with that for sure. But you know, of those battles for sure that we talked coming in, John. I mean, obviously left guard is now a battle, but you know, it's not. We all know who the left guard is on this football team. You know, from the battles coming in, it does feel like that Ringo and Adoree and now Jacorian, they're really fighting for that last for that spot. I mean, I don't know, unless you think Sidney Brown could maybe get jumped over, or just kind of those spots that we came into the offseason knowing that there was going to be a battle. Feels like that corner spot's the last one with a lot of question marks.
Well, you know, I still think, you know, anytime the end game is pretty clear, there's always an opportunity to get to that sooner rather than later. So I wouldn't completely shut the door on Jihad. I wouldn't completely shut the door on Makuba, because that's where they ultimately want to go.
Right.
And if they stay healthy and they start picking it up, and Jihad did at the Lincoln Financial Field practice, and they continue to play well in the preseason games, they could still make some inroads. Because again, that's where they want to go. So
Right.
if you got, it's a funny thing, even if it's human nature. If you got the GPS already programmed, you tend to arrive at the destination eventually.
Right.
So,
Even if they're marginally worse, maybe to start the year, but they're not, good enough in order, for the sake of getting to the end goal, maybe they go with that player.
yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I wouldn't, declare, and Nick's very careful to do that, obviously, because A, he doesn't have to, but B, part of it is true. Still only August 12th or whatever, and you had 23 days to the opener. So a lot can happen in that time, more injuries, et cetera, et cetera. What if Sidney Brown gets banged up and misses 6 practices? Well, maybe Drew McCoop is right back in it. So that type of thing.
Yep, good stuff there, Johnny Mac. John, day number 13 today. I think it's week 4 if we're counting it by weeks. We're starting up week 4 here. You mentioned kind of the dog day. What's today like? When you prep for the Browns to come in to two joint practices this week with the preseason game on the end of it. I think you get most of your work or your most valuable work in the 2 joint practices. But what's the approach from the team? How does that change in the practice setting?
Yeah, I think it's just a sharpening type thing. Again, I don't expect a high intensity practice today. Just would think you want to get the guys. Remember, they had an off day yesterday, so you want to get them back in, focus, prepare them for what you want to get accomplished against Cleveland, and get some field work done as well. So. This is probably going to be one of the more laid-back practices of the summer, I would say. But we'll see how it shakes out. I can't imagine, like I said, they would go heavy understanding what's coming the next 2 days.
Yeah, makes sense. Johnny Mac, Michael Clay set to speak this morning before practice. We actually have some special teams questions, Johnny Mac. What's on your mind going into the Michael Clay presser? On my mind, John, is my new guy, Darius Cooper. I want to know if he's an option or if they see something in him where they could use him on special teams, because I want Darius Cooper to make the football team. What are you thinking about on Michael Clay coming into that presser this morning?
Yeah, that's certainly going to be one of the questions, because they let him have the first team kickoff return reps. And they also let him practice as a gunner on punt coverage. So clearly they're trying to see if he can translate to special teams as well. And if he does, there's a good chance he's going to make this football team. Again, though, for rookies, especially undrafted rookies, you can't rest on your laurels. There's 2 more preseason games. There's 2 joint practices, and all the practices in between. If he lets up even a little bit, he's back on the outside looking in. So he's got to finish. Right now he's making the team, but he's got to finish. If all of a sudden starts to perform a little bit negatively, that could change pretty quickly.
Yep, Darius, if you're listening, keep grinding, brother. Hopefully you can continue to carve out a spot for yourself on this football team. John, would you agree with this statement, though? Their use of Darius Cooper in special teams would insinuate that they are intrigued by his first preseason game and what he's done in camp so far, and have moved the needle on whether he, at least their thought process on keeping him around. I think coming into camp, you're probably going to expect to keep Darius Cooper, but based on what he's done, based on the moves that they've made, and based on putting him out there for special teams, they're at least more intrigued by the player. Can you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I asked Nick about that before the practice at the link. He admitted, guys, he was getting first team reps, second team and first team reps, because he earned them, as Nick said. So yeah, I mean, they're already on record as being intrigued. and he's been performing. And as Nick said, he earned those reps. So I mean, he's making the football team right now. But you got to finish. Got to finish.
No doubt. Got to finish for Darius Cooper, who's had a good camp this far. John, how long is he a 3-year deal, John, when you sign an undrafted free agent like that? How does that work? Is he here for 3 years, assuming they keep him around?
Yeah, it's a 3-year deal. You saw it with Reed Blankenship. You
Right.
tend to buy out that 3rd year with an extension, try to keep them under. But yeah, they're under team control for a long time, so you don't have to worry about undrafted guys.
So if you envision a life, John, after Jahan Dotson, and even just into the future for Howie Roseman, who obviously has to have an eye on the now and an eye on the future, and that's what makes GMs, good GMs. Don't you think that Cooper could be viewed as a future wide receiver 3? I mean, Dotson's only here, I would think, max 1 more year. He's got 1 more year in his deal. I don't expect them to give him a contract extension or a new deal. So, even if it forces you to make some different back-end roster moves this year, wouldn't it be valuable in some regard to keep him around if you feel like he has wide receiver 3 potential?
Well, I don't think that factors in as much as, everybody's under team control for a long period of time. Whether you're a draft choice or an undrafted rookie, you're actually under team control for a longer time if you're drafted. So, I don't think that part of it factors into it. There's a long way before you start thinking about wide receiver 3 with Darius Cooper. Now he's wide receiver 6, so he's, if he makes the team, he's got a long way to climb, and you don't know what's going to happen in the offseason. They might draft a higher level receiver after losing somebody like Jahan Dotson. So
right.
I would say there's a lot of steps, and that's not currently in how he's thinking, other than, it's a nice find, and he's doing a nice job, and in the immediacy, he could help this football team in some regard, more likely on special teams early than receiver.
Yep, that makes sense. Johnny Mac, final couple thoughts here today. Michael Clay, probably, presumably, a subtle or somewhat softer practice today. They got two big joint practices tomorrow and Thursday with the Browns, so that'll be good. We'll be live tonight for Birds 365 from 6 to 8 p.m. Johnny Mac, your final thoughts going into day number 13 of training camp here.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think the most interesting part today will be the indication of how they'll handle left guard without Landon Dickerson for the short term. But, it's important because he might not be back, so or even week 2. So you want to get somebody ready if they have to play September 4th against the Cowboys. So I think the most interesting part is how they will go about that and how they will start about that process. And we'll get at least the first indications. Now, again, Kenyon Green is hurt as well, so he can't be involved. And, they might move parts. They might not move parts, so that part will be interesting.
Yep. Johnny Mac, good stuff, brother. We'll catch you after practice tonight for a nightcap edition of Birds 365. Thank you, brother.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks, J Mac. There's Johnny Mac, John McMullen, joining us right here on Football 24/7 to kick off the day today. Day number 13 of training camp practice for the Eagles. Heading out to the field. They'll have 2 joint practices tomorrow one tomorrow, one Thursday with the Cleveland Browns coming to town. Who will be the quarterback for the Browns? I think Dylan Gabriel's hurt. I think Kenny Pickett was back. They got Shador. I don't know if Flacco's practicing right now. So, I don't know. They got a lot of quarterbacks over there. Who knows what they're going to do? But good stuff. Good stuff overall.